Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folare. Okay, continuing in the election, we're done with the elections now, but of course our postmortems are in order, and we're sort of reviewing the performance. And today we have with us former chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council in the person of Honorable Ibrahim Itodo. He's reaching us. Good morning to you, sir. He's reaching us remotely.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, great to have you. Thank you for making the time for us. My name is Yori Folare in studio here.
Thank you for having me.
Always our pleasure. Now,
Thank you.
to get to it quickly, the elections are over, and if we look at the Kogi governorship election, you were an observer yourself. Give us your overview, sir, because I've heard preliminarily that by and large you think that it conformed with it conformed with truth, but that does not mean there's no room for improvement. So, what's it in your words, sir?
Well, I just want to appreciate you for giving me this privilege to extray the Kogi elections that was held on the 11th November 2023.
Okay.
As you all know, that election was a contentious one, in the sense that the three senatorial districts produced candidates that went into the election. And the election was based on sectionalism in overall participation. Secondly, the Central Senatorial District election produced one candidate. The Western Senatorial District produced two or three more serious candidates in that region. In the eastern flank, we had about 5 candidates contesting the same election in the same region. That was how the election went. So in the Eastern Senatorial District, we had multiplicities of parties contesting that election. In the West, we have 3. In the Central Senatorial District, we had one candidate standing for the whole region of the Central Senatorial District, as I've already analyzed. The overall thing is that if you see the background, you now discover that the Central Senatorial District had their election mocked under one candidate, Alhaji Ahmed Ododo of APC. In other regions, because of some multiplicities of political parties, their votes were splitted, and the result that came out was also splitted. So that was the angle to it. Another angle to that election was some candidates came with vindictive approach. They came with a vindictive approach into the election, and it played out. You just mentioned Dino Malayi that did not vote, went out to vote, to cast his own vote into the election because he felt there's no need to do it. But those who actually contested the election, with the analysis given above, I am not surprised that those results that came from various senatorial districts, I'm not surprised about that, because every senatorial district proved that he's the best going for that election at the moment. In overall view, I know that if elections are contested in all climes, there are bound to be grievances, there are bound to be challenges in that election. But I want to look at it from the sportsmanship angle, that if elections are contested in Nigeria, I want to say that because a winner has been announced, looking at the substantiality of the various angles put together in the electoral law, constitution, and the INEC discovered that there is no need to cancel an election, they went ahead to announce the winner of that election as collated from all the local governments. Since that has happened, I want to appeal to political parties that actually participated in this election, that elections are not, they are bound to be grievances and such challenges, as I've said. So the political parties must now come together, having their manifestos into the campaign. Everybody canvassed what he wants to do for Kogi State. At this point, a winner has been announced. I want to appeal to all the political parties that participated in this election to bring forth their manifestos and allow the winner of the election to actually look at it. So I will appeal to the winner of the election in APC, Alhaji Ahmed Usman Ododo, to extend hand of fellowship, which he has done, to all the participants to come. Because since the aim and the agitation is to correct the anomalies in the state, everybody had outlined the manifestos. I think it is wise for us to come together at this point, to look at the manifestos, work with the winner of the election, since the aim is to develop Kogi State, for us to have a peaceful background, for us to actually move the state forward, having a different directives in the positive direction of having a Kogi of our dream at this point. I want to also say something about the political parties. It is not always very good that after elections, we begin to rush into the courts to ventilate our anger in all cases. For me, I want to advise that the ventilation and then the surgical operation to this election can be done on the round table. We can have it on the round table with the winner, and let us have the grievances analyzed. And from there, we can move into proper governance.
Indeed.
Because by the time you go to these courts, the taxpayers' money are wasted, your hard-earned money are wasted in the courts. And in some cases that I have seen so far from the last presidential election, it is always very difficult to look at the nitty-gritties of the sequential elections that have been conducted to prove that, yes, this is the winner of the election, this is not the winner, this is the loser, and so forth, so on and so forth. So for the first time in Kogi State, I want to see that the political parties have the boldness, in spite of all the grievances, in spite of all the challenges that we have witnessed. We have the boldness, since a candidate has been announced, to come together at a time because of the peace in Kogi State, to begin to look at our manifestos and moving forward into proper governance where taxpayers' money are not just wasted in the cost to lawyers and other areas of expenses in trying to prove the allegations. Because, I want to also say that lawyers will not always tell us the truth after elections are contested. Because that is the only way they can also make money. They will not go freely to actually advance the causes of irregularities, overvoting, and whatever challenges that had been put in place in this election. Because they will always want where the money will come from. So for me, it is the onus lies on us as Kogas to come to a round table for us to look at ourselves as Kogi brothers and sisters. Lastly, I want to appeal to the winner of the election to be magnanimous in victory, and that it is not a victory for an individual. It's a victory for the APC. It's a victory for Kogi State. It's a victory for the commoners on the street. And so for an agenda setting. It is important that this election will start working on unifying the three senatorial districts because of the contentious aspect of the election. And I'm very sure Alhaji Ahmed, this man Ododo, with his humble background and his dexterity in leadership, will be able to do that expeditiously. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you for that opening salvo, Honorable Ibrahim Itodo. Indeed, we wait to see how it will go. Because already you mentioned one of the contestants, and that was in the form of in the person of Dino Melaye of the PDP, alongside Yakubu Murtala of the SDP, and of course with the winner. Those were the three broad, leading candidates, as it was thought. So yeah. Already one hasn't heard from the candidate of the PDP, but already we've heard from Senator Dino Melaye, who has, spoken. It's not too different from what we usually hear at elections, along the lines of there was no election. There was no election in Kogi State. Now, this is where it usually starts for. Of course, an election has been concluded, but what he is saying is that as far as he is concerned, there is no election. It would have been lovely if the lawyers, could give them the benefit of their own review of the situation and advise a person when his case is hopeless. But you see, in between, as you put it, the lawyers themselves, that is their profession and trade and craft, and shall we say, the sometimes undue optimism of the candidates themselves, then we end up in these long processes. But I don't know, it's not very helpful. You've said that you hope that the people will come together, sit on a round table, but already an important part of it, in the person of Senator Dino Melaye, has already been saying, at least that was, he was heard on one television station, I think it was it last night or day before, saying that there was no election. So this again begins to lead us as, oh dear, I hope we don't set off on this acrimonious path.
Well, you see, elections, I've said it earlier, that elections all over the world is not without grievances and pain.
Sometimes rancor.
Especially for the loser of an election. The onus lies on the loser to prove that there was an election or no election. But for me, I was in my ward, my federal constituency, and I voted. And anybody that said there was no election in Kogi State, I think must be, even the blind, they don't knew that there was an election, and it was contentiously contested. If you lose an election and you don't apply morals, you don't apply patience, you don't apply decorum to counsel to say that an election is totally not contested. Well, for me, I was also in the collation office of INEC, and I saw where all local government EOs brought their reports and well articulated, and the results were calculated before it was announced. I don't know where those figures came from. Did they come from the blues? No, not at all. They came from various local governments, wards, and polling units. So for me, and for Kogites generally, we knew that the election took place and results were announced after painstakingly looking at the nitty-gritties of the results as it came from all the local governments. So it's frantically, if anybody said there was no election, then I don't know what adjective to qualify what we had in Kogi State. It is also very important to know that if you are going into an election and you don't build in the mind of losing and winning, it is when after the election you begin to complain. It is very common. It's very normal for us, even in the United States, between Donald Trump and the last election booth bidding that had in that election. It was very contentious. It was not free and fair the way people looked at it. But unfortunately, elections are not won from public opinion. It is not won on the sentiments of people that have lost an election. The onus also lies on who alleges to prove. But I don't even want us to go this way because substantially, all the cases that have gone to courts to prove elections have not been too successful. But because they are not satisfied with what has happened, everybody had complaints of what has happened on the polling units, and they want to ventilate their anger. You can go ahead to ventilate an anger and see that the proof are tendered, and then whatever happens at the judiciary, I think that will give rest to all of us to follow. But I appeal to political parties for the sake of Kogi State to do the needful by coming together at this time to support the winner of the election so that we can move forward. If the dream for us to change the narratives is the central point and not selfish, let us now come together to be able to unify Kogi State irrespective of every sectional interest. It is important that Kogi people should be the central point that we should be considering moving forward into a better state without any ethnic, sectional, or religious biases.
Indeed. Thank you. As you had said earlier, and that has even been reported before now, that whereas there was substantial compliance, I guess these are some of the margins where those who want to take it all the way will probably be insisting on. Whereas there was substantial compliance, there still were issues of alleged overvoting, but everything is in proportion, I imagine, and where INEC has its own formula for looking at some of these allegations, and where it is felt that in the interest of everywhere, the alleged infringement was not going to be enough to materially affect the outcome. I guess INEC has those kind of parameters for looking at issues. I think in the same thing in the case of in the other case where there was the unfortunate incident of pre-filled election results forms. INEC, that was going to suspend and rerun elections, they said that it's not necessary, having looked at it all. And so these are areas of the kind of things that lead to overvote, that sort of suggest overvoting, and that those who lost, if they don't have the spirit, shall we say the sportsmanship spirit, knowing that only one person will win, these are the things that they will forever sort of tie down to. And these are the things that you've been talking about, that these issues are probably better served around the table as opposed to going on these litigious journeys.
Yes, it's rather very unfortunate that we find ourselves here. But, I told you earlier that the election was contentious between the three senatorial districts.
Yes.
And the Central Senatorial District election had a unified agreement. There was unity. There was consolidation. There was this pressure that this is our own. And they did not present two candidates. So they went into this election fully prepared and consolidated. And I'm not surprised that the turnout of that election in that senatorial district was massive, was a massive turnout. And so I'm not surprised that we had what seems to be overvoting, what seems to be an election that is that almost 95 or 85% came out. I'm not surprised. But if you go to the West, you have 3 candidates, as I've already told you. The votes there were shared with all the parties, especially with APC, PDP, and ADC. So the votes were depleted. And if you go to the East, if you analyze the votes there also, Murtala Ajaka had all the 8 local government from that place. But that notwithstanding, that election was a multiplicity of parties contesting. And so it also affected them. The APC, as the ruling party, also had a senator. They had a House of Representatives from there. They had assemblies. They have local government chairmen and councillors down the line. So this structure also affected what came from the Kogi East with all the parties participating in that election. So if you put this together, you can now deduce that the votes that came from the Central Senatorial District was consolidated, massively arranged, and the unity spoke for them. That is how I look at the election.
Yes.
But if there are allegations of overvoting, allegations of multi-dimensional cases that came out of that place, well, for me, it depends on the judiciary or those who are going to ventilate the issues and doing surgical operation to the election to actually tell us what is the truth about the result. But you should also see that the Ogorimagongo local government that actually substantially cancelled, the INEC has looked at the details of the number of the cancelled votes and also looked at the number of the accredited voters or number of those that collected their PVCs. If those things, the number, even if election is conducted 10 times and added to one candidate, the number, the difference between the winner and the loser is so large that is not significant.
Indeed.
You understand?
Indeed.
And that is why INEC applying the electoral law as amended and looking at the Constitution now gave them the free will, the free will to announce the election results as presented to them by all the EOs from various local governments. They have no reason to stop that election from being announced.
Okay,
but
one moment, please. I beg your pardon. One moment, please. I beg your pardon for interrupting you. Comrade Ayo in Oshogbo has been waiting for a while. Thank you very much for your patience, Comrade Ayo. Please go ahead now.
Good morning, Uncle Yomi.
Good morning, sir. Go ahead now.
Good morning to our guest.
Yes.
You see, the election in Kogi, those who are saying there was no election in Kogi are only saying that maybe because they lost the election or maybe because they have sympathy for those who lost the election. In an election where you say that there is no election, SDP as a party got half of the vote of the person who won the election. So if there was no election, how did you come about that? That is one. Two, when you say there is no compliance, that INEC did not comply or there is no compliance of the law, the Supreme Court has settled that matter. It is not enough to say that there is no compliance. Is the compliance, non-compliance substantial enough to affect the outcome of the election? If it is substantial enough to affect the outcome, yes, then the court will look at it. But if it is not substantial enough, then there is nothing in it that said the court will overthrow it. I want to advise anybody who is not happy with the outcome of this election, instead of taking laws into their hands, there are processes, there are institutions that has been set up by laws to take care of that. Let them follow that process. And that is the beauty of democracy. So I want to congratulate Governor-elect Ododo and other governors-elect as well in Imo and Bayelsa for their victory. God bless Nigeria.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Comrade Ayo. Now, just briefly now, before we will go on break, shortly, Honorable Ibrahim Itodo, the very occurrence of that issue that has now been adjudged to have not been significant enough to impact the results of the election. The very notion that in an election like this, that actually happened. I don't know, do you think we need to know more about that matter? Because even though it didn't have an effect this time, as was suggested, there are those who wonder, where else did things like that happen that maybe one's eagle eye or those with eagle eyes did not catch? The very fact that they were actually prepared. Now it's been determined that it wasn't significant, so we're not going to do a rerun there, we're not going to cancel the elections there. But that it actually happened, that some people actually, not so much that, of course it would have been people, that results were written. What does that say to you about, our attitudes to elections?
Yori, you see, the major problem in an election in Nigeria, for me, it does not lie with the security agencies. It does not lie with INEC. It does not lie with civil societies or observers of an election. The problem lies with the politicians themselves. Any politician that has an advantage over others try to do one thing or the other to win an election. It is a very clear thing. It's the character of politicians, or in all political parties. And so it is not an issue that can be corrected now. It is a long-time character of political parties and participants in an election. Secondly, INEC has about 7 days before the presentation of certificate of returns. And I know they will also look at the problems that was reported. When that is done, and a certificate of return is now received, the next thing for us to do is governance. The next thing for us to do is to congratulate, painstakingly, congratulate the winner of the election, for us to move forward.
Okay.